Today, what I feel moved to talk about is perhaps the most challenging part of our awakening. Most challenging part of my awakening is not often it's not the part that we really think it will be, the most difficult part. And for me, there were several years spent lost in one particular aspect of the illusion that I see almost everybody. In fact, I've never met anybody that doesn't get lost in this part of the illusion. And I wanted to try to bring light to that today, to bring some more conscious understanding, because as a teacher, I spend a large amount of my time on this particular aspect of the illusion. And it is perhaps the most challenging to see and to stay conscious of the fact that this is also illusion, this part of it. So I want to try to bring together in a nutshell what's been coming up for the Sangha in quite a few different ways over the last couple of weeks, and hopefully package it into something that's memorable and actionable, even though there is no doer. So for me, in my own awakening, I thought that the most difficult part of my awakening was, well, I thought it was many different things. Firstly, maybe to even see what the truth of my being actually is, to break through that first time into clear seeing. Turns out it wasn't that. And then, like, how to embody the truth, how to let it pervade my relationships, my life, my parenting, my family relationships, my work and everything. And it turns out it wasn't that either. And it turned out to be something that was really very subtle and very obscure. So that's where I wanted to really point to it today. We might, if I ask anyone here on this satsang what is their most challenging place in their awakening right now, probably we would all, and I would have done too, point to somewhere in our lives where there's great resistance or great difficulty in doing the practice or applying what we've seen to be true. For most of us, it seems really clear that the hardest part is where I'm struggling most to apply or to do the practice. But what if it is somewhere else and we keep missing it? What if the most challenging part of our awakening is something that we're not even seeing? Something that perhaps we hear in a moment described by a teacher, or we read it in a book, or we hear someone else talk about it, but then it's completely forgotten again because it is so the seeing that we're having is so contradictory to certain thoughts that we're holding on to. So we all initially have this idea that we are the believer of thoughts, that we are the doer of actions, and the decider of decisions, that the separate self, the person, the someone that seems to start this journey to awakening. The idea of that, the separate self, is sustained in these three areas more than any other at all. So the idea that I'm the one choosing what words come out of my mouth right now, me, the separate being. I am choosing, but not in the same way that I thought. I am everywhere, and I'm choosing all words, actions, and speech. Not as a personal entity. I'm not deciding decisions either. They're just happening spontaneously. I'm not doing any actions either. But most of all, or my body does the actions, I should say. Most of all, I'm not the believer of thoughts. I'm not the one who fell into illusion and has to come back out of it. So we might hear that sentence and go, yep, I am the awareness. The awareness is already free. And the silence, the consciousness, the presence, the real self, the divine self, the truth, the absolute reality, whatever we're calling it, It's already free and could never not be. And yet, the one place that I see everyone, and myself included, for several years, making an enormous effort to undo something that was never done is here in this believer of thoughts. I'm the one that's got to transcend the mind. I've got to question all of my thoughts, and especially the major ones, and gradually come away from the mind, unsticking myself from the mind one thought at a time, and gradually I'm getting more and more free of these thoughts. And that may be what self-inquiry and meditation and contemplation seem to achieve. But actually, they're there to show us one important fact. If we really follow the contemplation, the inquiry, self-inquiry, the meditation, it will show us something, that we're already free, that we never identified with the body in the first place. The infinite consciousness that is everywhere, formlessness. It doesn't have capacity to identify with anything. It just is. It can appear as thoughts about identification and a belief, which is just a thought that's given a lot of attention to. A belief that there is a believer of thoughts that has to be undone. But it is always free, and it is what we are right now. If we were to do some self-inquiry, we'd get back to the place immediately or quickly or soon where we realize we aren't actually a form at all. Then what we are is more like spaciousness, formlessness, with no capacity to hold on or let go of anything at all. That we are simply watching, observing, and all of this spiritual practice, spiritual work, transcendence, resistance, all of it, clear seeing, confusion, everything is just happening in front of us. As if you're watching a movie, and the movie's called My Awakening Journey. And in the movie is a character who's sure that they're doing this awakening themselves. And we're so embroiled with this character that we've forgotten that we're just watching. We're so enjoying the drama of the movie and suffering the drama of the movie that we're not even aware that we're sitting over here watching the screen in front of us. So for me, the hardest part of my awakening, and the slowest and the most painful, they're all going to be the same. The slowest, hardest, and most painful will be all at the same time, was coming to the point where I remembered to remember that I'm not doing anything, not even contemplation, not even self-inquiry, not even meditation. I just am. And that's all I can ever be. Just completely present in here. And then the spiritual practice that's going on is going on in the manifestation, in that which seems to be moving through time and space. An individual but not separate consciousness. A wave on the ocean surface, not separate to the wave, but nonetheless looking different as a wave. That the inquiry, the contemplation, the attending of this satsang, all of it is just going on while I'm watching. And that there isn't anything I can or need to do as the consciousness, as the presence, as the infinite self, to free myself from identification, because I was never involved in that at all. I never fell into illusion, and certainly cannot climb back out. I'm watching the content of my thoughts, my mind stream, become gradually more enlightened. Thoughts about reality rather than thoughts about being a someone, chosen more and more often, but no chooser. Spiritual practice, chosen more and more often, but no chooser. attention moving away from thoughts and back towards the infinite self that I already am more often, but no mover of attention, only the intention to come back to clear seeing, which is also just arising within me. I'd like to recognize myself more, says thought. And attention moves with that thought. The attention moving and the thought are the same thing, coming back to the self. But I didn't do that. I didn't make that happen. I have no control over my awakening at all as a separate being. As a separate being. None. I'm not the mover of attention. I'm not the decider of thoughts. Decisions, rather. I'm not the thinker of thoughts. I'm not the believer of beliefs. I'm not the transcender of the mind. I'm certainly not the resistor. I'm not the practicer either. Practice is just going on. And I would see this over and over again. Stay as the self. I just am. I just am. I just am. I still am. I still am. And then attention would move to some thought. And the body would get very contracted. There'd be some negative emotion. The same old experience going on in my outer world. And like a reflex, I would want to do something to fix that. It was habitual, automatic. And time again, it took a painful amount of time to come back to the seeing, I can't fix that. I don't need to fix that. I'm not actually suffering. I'm already free. It's my mind, my thought structure, my psychological self that's suffering, which is really just a bunch of thoughts and their resulting emotions. Not to belittle that, but it is not me in my first and foremost expression. And the idea that I could do anything to change the course of my awakening is pure fiction. Our mind doesn't like to hear this because it thinks, well, if I can't do anything, I am totally out of control and I will never wake up and I will never be free of illusion. But you don't need to wake up. You are already free of illusion and you are watching the body and mind and the relationships and the career and the finances and the family become an expression of that truth. That's all that's happening. So what is the most important thing for you to remember? And how can you make sure that you remember? And what happens when you admit finally that you can't do anything you can't even move attention? If I ask you now to take your attention off what you're seeing on the screen and to move it to someplace else in the room, it might move, attention might move, your eyes might move, but did you make that happen? As a separate being, did you do something to make that happen? Or did it move by intention? My question, my suggestion caused an intention to arise inside. Or my question and the intention in you were the same thing in two different bodies. And attention just moved. And there's no personal entity steering that wheel of where the attention goes. There's no one driving the bus in that way. It was the last place that I wanted to hang out because initially it made me feel powerless. I'm just going to be suffering forever. I'm never going to be free, says mind. Because mind can't recognize that you're already free, actually. And that this is the most loving thing that we can do for our mind and our body and our life and our loved ones and our relationships and our career and our finances. When I finally admit that I can't do anything, I'll also realize quite quickly afterwards that I don't need to. That my simple observation of my awakening and a clear recognition that I can't do anything about it as the infinite self will come to this deep and profound insight that I don't need to. that it's happening by itself as an expression of the infinite intelligence that I am pouring through the form. It's happening spontaneously. And my imaginary attempts to speed it up have actually been slowing it down. So the last and the least most popular place in awakening is I am just watching. And if this is clear right now, good. But what can you do to make sure that you don't go back into that? How can you remind yourself? Because for me, I would see this, and then 3 months later, I'd be noticing my body in deep contraction and a whole lot of negative emotions, and the same old patterns cycling around in my experience as my experience. And I'd realize that for the last 3 months, the major content of my mind had been that I have to do something. I have to undo what's been done. That I'm suffering because I haven't yet undone what I did originally, which is falling into illusion. When actually I'm suffering because I think there's something I can do. So we're not suffering ever because we haven't yet pulled ourselves out of the bad dream that we're stuck in. We're suffering because we haven't fully realized we're only dreaming. And this isn't an invalidation of the world and what's going on in the world. This is the only way to right what we think needs to be righted, to put right, and have happen what we want to happen. First of all, our own awakening, and then onwards from there. I'm going to say it again because I want to just crystallize it into these 2 sentences so that we perhaps can put it in a I don't know, I had post-it notes all over the house, in the car, anywhere I would see them so that I didn't forget, because I couldn't go through another 3 months of 6 months. The first cycle took a year to realize. Wow, I went right back into the idea that I could do something. I agreed with that straight away. 10 seconds after I'd seen that I couldn't do anything, and nor did I need to. I went right back into that, and I was lost for a year. And then after that year, there was this fire of determination. Next time took 3 months. And then the next time took 2 months because I spent the first month beating myself up instead of just going, okay, that happened. Let me move on. So after this 2 months time, I ended up with notes all over the house, in my slippers, in the fridge, by the teapot, everywhere, in the car, in my bedroom. So it was the first thing I saw. I just am. Like I said, I just am. And then in capital letters underneath, I can't do anything. Sometimes I'd write, there's no believer of thoughts. But whatever it took in that moment to make sure I didn't fall back, apparently. Here's where the paradox really kicks in. Anything I say makes it sound like I'm doing something. So what can you do to make sure that you remember the next 2 sentences? So you're never suffering because you haven't yet freed yourself enough or embodied this enough or whatever else we're believing. You're only suffering because we think that there's something going on other than just watching. The mind, the body, the attention, the intention, the spiritual practice, or the lack thereof, the resistance or the breaking through, it's all just going on by itself while you watch. And as you remind yourself of that over and over, you'll feel freer and freer, and you'll realize you've always been free. And somehow magically, by admitting you have no control, the attention comes to rest on you, the real self, peace. So for me, it became about what is the most important thing for me to remember. And that the hardest point, most challenging point in my awakening might not be at all what I thought it was. It might be coming to see somehow that I'm lost in some illusion. I think I'm lost in some illusion and I really aren't. And over again, we come to seeing that that's not true, that we're already free. Over and over again, somehow this this veiled cloud of hypnosis or whatever illusion fog comes back over us. Fascination with thoughts rather than actual experience. Obsession with what we think is going on in our awakening rather than what's actually going on, which is nothing at all. You're already free. So I've said that in as many ways as I can to try to highlight the most important part of the whole awakening thing. And it may seem counterintuitive to recognize that you can't do anything when the body's really in the grip of some negative emotion, or there's something terrible going on in the world, or there's some cyclic pattern going on in your life, or that you're sure that you're suffering. But maybe this is the most compassionate thing to do for yourself, for the world, to admit and remember and go to whatever lengths you want to remember to remember. And then from there, see what happens with the world and your life and everything. Because soon after we've finished this, maybe even now while I'm talking, the idea is going to present itself that you can do something with what I've just said. That there's something you can do with it. You can take it and run with it. And will you buy that? And most likely you will, because we all do. But what will you do? What will you put in place to make sure that you remember? You're never suffering because you're not yet free. You're suffering because you haven't remembered you're already free. And that's a very different thing. One involves a long process that never comes to an end of trying to free yourself from the illusion that you're not even stuck in. It's happening on the level of the mind and attention. And one is instant freedom. Whoa, there I was about to go off again. Let me come back and remember I'm already free. For me, this became the most important, the Holy Grail, the direction, the most important thing to follow. So I hope it's inspired you in some way, what I've said, that this is a lot easier and simpler than you think. And that the reason for any of the practice going on is just to clear away the illusionary power of thought and belief that stops this being so stunningly obvious all the time. And that's all any awakened being has done, or not done, is to see and see and see and see and see and see and see until even the content of the mind has changed. I'm already free. I'm already free. There's nothing to do. There's nothing for me to do. And I'm going to watch what effect that has on my world, my body, my life, the world. It's an especially poignant message right now when a lot of us might be really compelled to do a lot of spiritual practice with what's going on the planet. Not just this week, but, where we are right now in our evolution as a species, human beings. But what's the most effective thing? What's going to lead to real change? Is it to get lost in this idea again that there's further for you to go? Or is it to remember you're already home and you never left? Nor could you ever. There's no door where you could exit into the illusion. It just never happened. And I'm emphasizing this because it is the hardest sticking point for all of us, isn't it? But it's because we're so devoted to truth and awakening that we want to make sure it happens. Of course we do. Because we're tired of feeling how we feel in our bodies and our minds. We want to make sure we're free. But that's never going to come by a lot of effort. Only a recognition and a remembrance, a vigilance to hold vigil over what is already true and the only thing that's ever been true.